Ms. Grover left the court without making any comment. She later posted on social media saying she was absolutely devastated and that women were being discriminated against.
Did this appeal backfire, Ms. Grover?
Her supporters hope the case is taken to the High Court.
None of us will give up until the law is changed to clarify things for people. Women have to have our own spaces, it's very clear.
Jamie McKinnell, ABC News, Sydney.
The ruling clearly reinforces what the Australian community stands for, that all women are protected from discrimination by law. Trans women, cis women, lesbian women, queer women, straight women, First Nations women, women of colour, migrant women, women with disabilities, all women.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So obviously by now you are all aware about the decision in the Giggle versus Tickle case, or the appeal. So the original decision was upheld and Sall lost the appeal. And the judges were saying things like it's not their job to change the law or to determine whether the law is good or bad. It's just for them to interpret the law. And people can't help but go back to 2013 when the feminist female prime minister erased women from legislation, essentially, introducing gender identity and allowing people to have certain rights based on their gender identity. And that simply undermined sex-based rights. And this is where we're at today. So Sall was ordered to pay $20,000 and court costs an additional maximum $100,000 of court fees. She has to pay this to Jason Tickle, also known as Roxanne Tickle, a trans-identified male, after he was denied access to her Giggle for Girls, all-female app. The app she set up a few years ago specifically for women to have their own space, a safe space, and it was for females only. And Jason couldn't handle that, so he decides to try and impose himself on a women-only app. And when he was rejected, he decided, him and along with a bunch of, LGBTQ activists, decided to punish Sall for refusing to let a man onto the app. She simply recognized him as a male in a selfie he submitted for onboarding. And something that really annoyed me from the speech given by the judges, one of them said that, Jason Tickle was rejected because of his appearance. And of course, as soon as the proceedings began, we began hearing them refer to this person as she, her. When I heard that, I wasn't very optimistic, and I saw where it was going. And it's rooted in the court system in Australia, this ideology. Here as well, we are awaiting the decision in our Supreme Court here concerning two male athletes who want to impose themselves on women's sports. And they were using terminology such as cisgender. In the Supreme Court here in America, they're using cisgender and other woke terminology. So she said that he was rejected based on his appearance. Remember in the court case, they were talking about him wearing a low-cut top, and that's supposed to mean he's a woman. So Sall used an app, some software that determined whether one was male or female based on the selfies that were submitted. And Roxanne Tickle, no surprises, flagged in the system immediately because this person is male. But she even relaxed some of the settings so that women who may look more masculine were able to access the app. Roxanne Tickle, or Jason, was unable to. And the judge said it was because of his appearance. No, it's because he is a man. So we're talking about 4 years of litigation, with Tickle having first filed a discrimination complaint through the Australian Human Rights Commission in December of 2021. At the time, Sall was in her third trimester of pregnancy. She's been dealing with this as a new mother, hasn't even had a chance to stop and enjoy motherhood. She's had to also deal with this hanging over her head for years. She decided to appeal the initial decision because people were saying, the fight isn't over and we need to keep going. And she decided to do that. And now she has revealed that she will take this all the way to the High Court. Initially, she was ordered to pay $10,000 to Tickle. And now this has been doubled. So the courts have punished her even further. And the court basically said that Sall implementing measures to protect women to make sure that her app provides a safe space for women, she was found to have discriminated against Tickle. See how that works when you introduce gender identity into law? Measures that women put in place to protect themselves and other women is now called discrimination. So it was Justice Melissa Perry who sided with Tickle and doubled the compensation payout from $10,000 to $20,000, found Grover guilty of direct discrimination and ordered her to pay court costs for Tickle of up to $100,000. I'm going to link the Giggle crowdfund in the comments below. I know I always forget to link things, but I'm going to make sure I do that because it's really important that we continue to support Sall in whatever way you can, whether it's sharing this story, donating. You know, she's being punished financially. She hasn't even been able to start her business. She refuses to put this app out until it's allowed to be women only. So she hasn't even been able to start her business and to look out for her livelihood to support her and her daughter. And we're talking about Section 5B of the Sex Discrimination Act, 1984. Gillard introduced this, her administration introduced this, and it defines what constitutes discrimination and is divided into two categories, direct discrimination and indirect discrimination. So direct discrimination occurs when someone is treated less favorably than a person of a different gender identity would be treated in the same or similar circumstance. It can be inferred from this definition that the law is suggesting that all individuals possess a gender identity, making, the terms male and female useless. And indirect discrimination is said to occur when a condition or requirement is imposed that is the same for everyone, but has an effect of disadvantaging people of a particular gender identity. And that condition is not reasonable under the circumstances. So the final ruling stated that Grover had engaged in unlawful direct discrimination against Tickle by excluding Miss Tickle from access to the Giggle app on the basis of her gender-related appearance, refusing to restore Miss Tickle's access to the Giggle app on the basis of her gender-related appearance, and thereby treating Miss Tickle, who is a transgender woman, less favourably than a person designated female at birth seeking access to the Giggle app. Replace transgender woman with cross-dresser or AGP and tell me whether it's reasonable to force women to have these men in their spaces and to punish women for taking measures to protect themselves. They use this terminology to placate people and to paint a different picture. Women are being forced to have these men in their spaces, in their showers, locker rooms, because they're allowed to be in those places based on gender identity. So Sall said, "I am absolutely devastated. Men who claim to be women have more rights than actual women in Australia. It is women who are being discriminated against, not the men who claim to be us. But in a sense, nothing has changed. We will all wake up tomorrow and men will still not be women." So check out this Redux article. It does, a brilliant breakdown of the premise of the decision. I'm hoping we all support Sall in her pursuit of getting this reviewed at the High Court. Absolutely. But the law has to be changed. The people who are elected, it's up to them to change this law to remove gender identity. Once biological sex is acknowledged and restored in legislation, that covers everybody. What Jason said there was so disingenuous. It was an outright lie, in my opinion, because it doesn't protect all women, obviously. It doesn't protect women when men can impose themselves in women's spaces. Any man can walk into women's showers, locker rooms, compete in women's sports, as Jason has done. A man only needs to identify as trans, and join a women's sports team, and he's in the locker room.
I really didn't like being in the male changing rooms. I felt really uncomfortable there. I didn't like the smells or the sounds.
And you're not allowed to question their appearance. They made that clear. So any man can just walk into the women's locker room. You're not allowed to question whether he's really transitioning, because they're all at different stages of transitioning, right? So these policies have taken away all protection for women and little girls. That's the reality of it. The reaction online is overwhelmingly in support of Sall, and people are saying that Australia is now a laughing stock. That no serious country would allow this. Someone said that, a man only needs to claim to identify as a woman and present himself as a woman, and that's it. But Sall said, actually, you don't need to make yourself look like a woman. As per the full federal court, apparently, looking like a man is a protected characteristic of being a trans woman.
One of, I think, the most chilling, disturbing, and stupid parts of the decision is they have said that it is direct discrimination because I've acknowledged that he looks like a man, and looking like a man is effectively a protected characteristic of being a trans woman. I can't even say this with a straight face. It's just so ridiculous. So basically, if you say like that, not only is that a man, but that looks like a man because he's a man, that's direct discrimination under Australian law. This is not sustainable. What are they going to do? Punish every single person down to infancy who has the human instinct to be able to acknowledge a member of the opposite sex? They can't. It's not possible.
This case couldn't exist if he was a woman. Impossible. Women don't need to sue anyone to be women. Being a woman is effortless, except for the patriarchy and its submissives, wasting our lives. This AI-generated video sums it up perfectly. The law has to be changed. They need to fix the mess that Julia Gillard and her government created as a matter of urgency. And some people are saying that they have reservations about Sall going to the High Court because they don't want her to continue to be put through this. Like, enough is enough. And, what is the likely outcome going to be? Is it just going to be more of the same? And that is a real legitimate concern. I'm personally very sick of watching the courts torture a woman for knowing what a man is. I'm worried that an appeal to the High Court will result in the same outcome, and we're simply torturing Sall further. It's the laws that are the problem. It absolutely will, because the job of the court is to interpret the law, and in this case, it is the law that is flawed. So let me know what you think about that. Do you think going to the High Court is worth it? Some people are saying that it's still worth it because it does bring more publicity to what is going on, because there's people who weren't paying attention, but when they heard the outcome of this case, that the appeal was denied, they're like, this is insane. So it does have that effect, but how is that going to affect Sall to go all the way to the High Court? The expense, the time, the stress. The reason why the UK Supreme Court ruling worked in our favour was because the Equality Act hasn't changed. It comes as no surprise that Jason Tickle took selfies of himself in the women's changing room. And, someone reported that Sall broke down upon hearing the decision, and she wasn't alone. So many of us did, because, number one, we're thinking about her and what she's been put through. And it was just so abrupt. It was like, well, that's it. As if this isn't affecting the lives of real women. You can see there, Jason was surrounded by women, and maybe there's a couple of men there, but predominantly women. And don't get me wrong, there's also men celebrating the decision. Very weird, questionable men celebrating the decision. Some of them claim to be men's rights activists or whatever, as if AGPs going into women's locker rooms and showers is men's rights. This is predators' rights we're talking about here. The rights of predators, the rights of perverts to impose their fetishes on women and little girls. So we had all sorts of weirdos celebrating the decision. So any man who's celebrating this decision is telling on himself. Still makes me laugh that Julia Gillard wrote a book on misogyny and feminism while she single-handedly demoted every woman in Australia to a second-class citizen. This is your legacy, Julia. you should hang your head in shame.
So both myself and my infant daughter were in the courtroom when the judgment for Tickle v Giggle was given down, and I gotta say, seeing it online is one thing. Witnessing the bullshit in person, it hits like a fucking freight train. And the state of the people that were there to support him, like, me, it was nuts. Like, each and every one of them looked like a walking example straight out of the DSM-5. It was no words, man. Again, I cannot get over the fact that the judge, a federal judge, was using she, her, while I was holding and breastfeeding for part of it, my baby girl. Like, how are they the same thing? They're not. We are truly living in the upside down. My heart breaks for Sall, it really does. I know how hard she's worked and the toll that this whole process has taken on her, and it's not fair. You know, women and girls in Australia, we exist, no matter what the court says, and this fight is definitely not over.
They've handed down a decision that says she discriminated against a man because she didn't let him into a women's only app. This means that the law now says that men can be in women's bathrooms, women's sporting teams. My daughter today, of all days, has just qualified to represent Australia in world sports climbing. She came second in the country today, which means she gets to be selected. What do I tell her? That our country doesn't protect girls-only sports and allows boys who have an actual biological advantage, according to Justice Perry and the full federal court. Well, it would be discriminatory to have a women's only space. As a mum, I'm absolutely furious. And there's only two ways now that we can save our girls. One, this can be appealed to the High Court and be overturned. Now, there is some potential for this because remember that activist Victorian judges incarcerated Cardinal Pell, only to have that completely overturned at the High Court with a unanimous finding that there was zero evidence to convict him. The second option, if we can't get this overturned at the High Court, is for legislation. Who would have thought it? But we actually need legislation defining what a woman is in this country. If you're as sick as I am of this woke, radical leftist nonsense taking over everything and coming after our kids, then you got to follow along and join our movement as we fight back for our girls and for our country and for our future.
Those are the two options. I agree, and they should be utilised. So we continue to stand with Sall, and there is hope. But it's devastating to see that women are being punished for acknowledging that men are men. They're being punished financially in all sorts of different ways. So let me know what you think about taking this to the High Court and what was your reaction to the decision. So thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video. And a huge thank you to all of those who have hyped my videos. It is greatly appreciated.